It's an issue of what you have done with me. What have you done with your time on earth for me? And he's saying here that if we have an opportunity and you say nothing, well, it's going to come back on you because you should have said something. And we need to be people that say something. And I know it's hard and it's scary at times to even stand up, but even if you have an opportunity of just saying, I bless you and thank you, and I know there's the whole gospel that, that we have to preach and everything, but as Stu said, sometimes we just need to plow. We just need to dig something up so the next person can sow something in. I don't know what we have to do, but we have to say what the Spirit of God tells us to say, or what the impression in our heart, what we can say, or look for an opportunity. Give an agape card out. I forgot to bring them, but we've got new agape cards and invitation cards. Give something to someone. Show some love, yeah? Because love breaks down the barriers. And when he ate that scroll, it says that it tasted like honey. Even though it was bitter, it tasted like honey. And so even though sometimes it has a bitter message in it for you, it still tastes good. And you know why it tastes good? It tastes good to those who obey, but to those who reject it, it's bitter. That's right. So if we obey, even if it's bitter against you, if God comes against you and he comes and disciplines you in some way, it may be a bitter discipline, but to you it will taste like honey because it's a lovely dad who loves you, who's trying to help you. But if you reject it, it will be bitter. It says, if you warn them, then it says, if righteous people turn away from their righteous behavior, these are talking, people like us, we're righteous, turn away from righteous behavior and ignore the obstacles I put in their way, they will die. You see, sometimes obstacles are put in our way, and he says, they ignored them. In other words, when we are righteous and we turn away from God and start to live unrighteous, God puts obstacles and says, stop, please come back to me. Stop it, I love you. Stop it, there's your obstacle. And you just keep going around them. Nope, I'm going to continue to live this way and I don't want to hear from you. Right? He's saying here that they will die. And the death is a time when your life will just feel like a dung heap. It will be just bad. Even on this earth, we lose our joy, we lose our happiness and everything because we don't live the way we should be living, because we keep avoiding the obstacles that God puts for us. And he's saying to these people the same thing. I'll put obstacles in there because I love them and I want to bring them back, but if they're going to ignore it, they're going to die. We need to let the people know out there, hey, listen, look at creation. If you keep ignoring this God who created everything for you, loves you so much, you know what's going to happen one day? You're going to meet him and there will be death. Come on, get into life. You see, it's a message that we have. Then he says, but if you do not warn them, they will die in their sins. Those people are dying out there. People are dying everywhere around the world in their sin as quick as you can do this. And people are being born as quick as you can do that. People are dying in sin quick as you do this around the world. You know, that's a lot, eh? And people are being born just like this. None of their righteous acts will be remembered, and I will hold you responsible for their deaths. There are people out there, I saw that Jolie, what's her name? Angela Jolie or whatever. They're going out and they're doing humanitarian aid and things like that, which is good. But that's not the thing. You know, Stu taught here that we have a message. They can't bring the message of hope. They can't bring the message of life. But they can give the humanitarian things that we can do that with our food bank, but we do it with a purpose, and that is to give the good news. You see, it's no good just being good out there. It's about having a purpose to come through and bring the good news with it. In verse 21 it says, but if you warn people not to sin, and they listen to you and they do not sin, they will live, and you will be saved yourself. Verse 27, but then I give you a message, I will loosen your tongue and let you speak. So before that he says, I will make your tongue like sticky to the roof that you won't even be able to speak. But at the right time, I will loosen your tongue and you'll be able to say what you say. So he's saying really to us here that there is a time in a season that you must speak, and you must speak through the will of God. If you do it in God's power and God's way, it will be effective and it will be powerful in the Spirit. But if you do it out of your own flesh and your own thoughts, then there's no thump behind it. And so God will loosen and God will give you some things to say at the right time. It'll be like a sledgehammer hitting them in the soul. You could go to someone and just say thank you, and it'll just crush their spirit if the Spirit of God's behind it, because they'll just feel your love. and say, you're so different, you're so loving. That thank you, you just meant it. The Spirit of God will grab and you say, you know why? Because I was loved. You know, I was in a slimy pit and I was brought to the love of God through Christ. You'll get opportunities. And that's all he's asking you for you. Chapter 4, it says, it's a sign of coming of age. And now, Son of Man, take a large clay brick and set it up in front of you. Draw a map of the city of Jerusalem. Show the city under siege. Build a wall around it so no one can escape. And set the enemy's camp. And surround the city with sledge ramps and so on. So he's saying also here that, you know, we need to be able to be strong. We need to be able to have walls. We need to be able, so the enemy will come. He says, I'm going to make you a watchman to watch out. Watchmen would be people that would stand at the city gates on the top of the towers, and they'd be watching for enemies. And they'd be watching for not the enemies that's here, but the ones that are coming. And so we need to be people that are continually like that eagle, that are visionary, to be watching for the things that may come against us, and the people that are the Christians as well. You know, if you're living in bad sin and you're doing something wrong, and if I say, God bless you, well, man, I'm going to be accountable for that. But if I say, hey, look, I really love you, but that part that you're going down the track, it's going to hurt you. I really don't want you to see you hurt. Can I help you in any way through this? I'm there for you. God will say, well done, good and faithful servant. But too many times we watch people go down the tube and we say, oh, God, we'll pray for them. But really, you're not. We're not really doing anything. See, because our call is for those who are rebelling and are lost. It's those, you know, there's so many people out here, I'm out of time, but the people out here that aren't even, who have taken offence with the Christian church, that have taken offence with other Christians, and that's why they're not in church. And the biggest church out there is those who are not coming to church because of offence. God's saying these are the ones who are loved by him but are in rebellion, to get them and go and call them. We have to be called to those people as well, because God's calling them back. Amen? So I believe this communion here talks about that as well, but also he's talking about it's a call for obedience and proclamation, seeking the souls that need to be transformed. And the fourth thing I believe that this really talks about is the call to give an account. You know, because we are to be called to give an account for what we do. And, you know, and our heart is the most important thing. God's not looking for your action. He's looking for your heart while you do the action. We can do nice things, but just do it begrudgingly. Well, God says just keep it. It's like giving your tithes and offerings. If you're a bit grumpy about it, or you don't really do it in joy, just keep it in your pocket, because it means nothing to him and you get nothing from it. But if you're joyful about it and you experience when God says, that's great. So when we do things in love, it has to be in love. And if you can't feel love, or you don't know how to love, you've got to ask God for love. You've got to say, God, and you've got to study love. You've got to work into it and experience it, so that when you can give it, you can permeate love. So we give our gifts, we give our talents, and we give our treasure to him. So the cross, I believe, says all these things. And we need to be people that follow Jesus. Why do we follow Jesus over anybody else? Why is it that there's other cults out there? There's one going through the media now that people think that he's Jesus Christ. He's the Messiah. He's the Son of God. There's one up in Kingaroy that says, I am Jesus. His name's Alan. Shouldn't it be Jesus? I mean, shouldn't it be Alan Christ and say Alan his last name? And I mean, how many miracles you've done and you're still wearing glasses, man, and I don't know what's happening, you know? So I just don't understand that stuff, that people get sapped into it and they look like normal people. And I think it's a spiritual thing that comes over them. It's a spiritual covering. It's from the evil one that they can't see, you know? And then their veil gets lifted and it's too late. But people are willing to die for these messiahs around the world. We've seen it. You know, different places where they take cyanide and all sorts of stuff. What makes it different to Jesus? Really, you think about it. You know, we're following Jesus. Who says he's the Messiah? Like, I mean, we're going to die for him? Look, the disciples died for him, but they could have been just as nutty as these guys that were dying for him around the world. What makes Jesus any different? This is what the world asks. You better have an answer. The answer is the resurrection. No one else has rose. There's been so many witnesses. Look at his family that's actually transformed and changed, that didn't believe him at all, and next minute they're believing and they're his disciples. I mean, you can trick your friends, but you can't trick your family. They thought he was a nutty at the beginning, but then they realised he was God. So many things. Look at Paul, man. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was a smart man. He just got transformed and changed for Jesus Christ. No one can do that. He's no nutcase. I think as we come to communion today, we just need to remember that we have a call on our life. And that call is a great call. You know, when we're serving the King of Kings. And you know what? He chose you before the foundation of the world. It doesn't mean that you're predestined before anyone else. It means the world was predestined before the world, but he chose you and he knew you before the world. He had the relationship with you now before the world. So that's why he sees you and he says you're predestined, because I've had relationship with you before you were even born. I've had relationship with you tomorrow and you haven't even felt it yet, but I felt it. So you don't have to fear about tomorrow. You don't have to worry about it, because I'm already in it. I've already been there and I've already prepared the way for you. Just walk in it. Isn't it cool? What a great person we serve. Can we have the leaders up? We're going to take some communion right now, if that's okay. The ones who are doing communion, and we'll hand that out. What a great call we have to serve the living God, the creator of all this, the one that holds everything together, the one that if he said no more holding together, we would just explode, this seat would just explode, this would not stay together. He says, I hold everything together. Your hair on your head, your follicles, everything would just explode. Your atoms would explode to explode to explode. But he holds everything together. He's the creator of all, and he's your daddy. Wow. Isn't it cool? He's your savior. And Jesus came in the form of a human being, in flesh, dwelt among us, showed us the way. If all the ants were going along and they're going to fall off a cliff, what's the best way to get to an ant? Become an ant, have a chat with them. God came and spoke to us to show us the way. Isn't it awesome? That's the loving God that we have. So let's come out, let's eat, and let's drink together in communion.